Star Wars Episode 9 The Rise of Skywalker is finally here. It's upon us, it's finally out, and this will be my non-spoiler review on Star Wars Episode 9 The Rise of Skywalker. Star Wars Episode 9 The Rise of Skywalker follows Kylo Ren on a mission trying to find Emperor Palpatine, while Rey, Finn, and Poe are also on a mission doing a thing, and Carrie Fisher is back. So that's technically all I can say about this story without giving any spoilers. Because everybody already knows that the Emperor is in this movie. I mean, it's been in all the trailers, it's been on the posters, so that's no big surprise to anyone here. We all knew the Emperor was coming back for this ninth movie, so I'm not saying anything that's not true. I saw this movie last night, and I went into it extremely excited. I mean, just having J.J. Abrams back, continuing his story from Episode 7, and continuing on from that, and Episode 9 just being a sequel to Episode 7 and 8, and having Palpatine make his grand comeback to this franchise. I was excited. I was excited to see this movie. And one of the main reasons for why I was excited for this movie was Palpatine. I mean, Palpatine died in Episode 6, and he's only now making his comeback to this franchise. So I was so glad to hear the original actor who portrayed Palpatine in the original franchise is back playing Palpatine once again in this. And so yeah, there was so much greatness I was looking forward to. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. Let's get into what I liked in Episode 9. The first thing that I did like is Carrie Fisher. All the footage that we see of Carrie Fisher in this movie is unseen footage from The Force Awakens, and I think that they do an excellent job at having a compelling narrative for Carrie Fisher's character in this, and also having a great send-off for her character in this movie as well. That was probably one of the biggest surprises of this movie, was to seeing how compelling Carrie Fisher's narrative for this movie actually was, and how strong her character is. The story in this is really strong, and then her send-off is really sad to see. Without getting into spoilers, that's all I can really say about Carrie Fisher. But yeah, for the amount of footage that they recorded in Episode 7, they still end up pulling off a really strong send-off for Carrie Fisher's character in Star Wars. This is a really strong send-off for her character. The second thing that I like is the action sequences. There's one in particular that takes place on a spacecraft, and the fights it was in the trailer, between Kylo Ren and Rey, and that was a really entertaining fight sequence where all the waves are crashing up against the spacecraft. That was a really entertaining action sequence. I will probably say for the most part, these action scenes are really well directed, but I will also, on the other hand, I will also say these action scenes are not better than the ones that were in The Force Awakens. I still think these action scenes in Episode 9 are still really entertaining and excellent, but I think the ones in Episode 7, I just feel like are better directed, have more effort behind them. But that's not saying these action scenes do have effort behind them. I just didn't feel like these action scenes were as strong as the ones in Episode 7. And that's where I stopped my positives, because I hated this movie for the most part. Minus the positives I just said, everything else from a storytelling perspective, from a script perspective, and from a dialogue perspective, this was embarrassing. And as a Star Wars fan, I did not like this movie. And just as a movie fan, I did not like this movie. There's a lot of issues I have with this movie. I think the biggest issue I have is this movie fails to answer the most simplest questions in the franchise. To do with Palpatine in this movie, I was very unsatisfied. Here's how I would put it. If they totally removed Palpatine from this movie, the movie would be no different or it maybe would have been a lot better. Because the only reason for Emperor Palpatine returning in Episode 9 is for fan service. And back to my point about the runtime. This movie feels like 4 movies put into a 2-hour and 22-minute runtime. This is a very rushed movie. This is a very messy movie. They have so much to do in this movie, and especially Palpatine coming back, they have a lot of explaining to do for his character. I was very unsatisfied with Palpatine's return. And this is only my opinion. If you have a different opinion, that is all good. More power to you. But this is really just my own opinion here, and I was very unsatisfied. This Palpatine, he was there for fan service and fan service only. But that's not saying he does have a few cool scenes in this movie. Yeah, that's technically what I can say about Palpatine without getting into spoilers, because they have so much to do in this movie. Like I said, we have multiple stories going on. We have one story following with Kylo Ren, and then we have another story with Rey, Finn, and Poe. And then we have Palpatine's story going on, and there's so much narrative and storytelling that they have to do here, and that's to do it in a short amount of runtime. And this was my biggest problem with Justice League, is that movie, and like I don't want to really compare these two movies because, Justice League's DC, this is Star Wars, I don't really want to compare them, but this will get my point out a lot more clearer to you guys. So, Justice League was also a very messy and rushed movie as well, due to it having a very short runtime of exactly 2 hours. And that movie had so much to do. That movie had to set up an interesting villain of Steppenwolf, along with introducing Flash, Cyborg. Aquaman came out in 2018. I'm pretty sure Justice League came out in 2017. So the Aquaman movie came out after Justice League. So yeah, they had so much to do. They had to set up these characters for the audience that aren't familiar with who these characters are, with their backstories, their origins, and all that. Along with setting up Steppenwolf, and along with kind of setting up what Darkseid's plan is. And 2 hours just did not cut it for that movie. And that's probably what they do here, is just 2 hours and 22 minutes is just not enough to bring Palpatine back into the picture, follow Kylo Ren's story, and follow Rey, Finn, and Poe's story. There's so much going on in this movie, and there is so much moving around in this movie. And like there's just so much moving around in a way where I say it as the characters, like, they move to location to location to location. And it's just, at a point, it just feels very disjointed because there is so much happening in this movie. There is a lot going on in this movie. There is a lot that they have to explain, and there is a lot of story that they have to cover in this short amount of runtime, along with pleasing two types of audiences here: the audience of the new franchise and the audience of the old franchise as well. And this episode 9 wasn't just going to wrap up the new franchise. No. It was going to wrap up all 40 years of the Skywalker saga. So, yeah, there were two types of audiences that this movie was trying to please. So, yeah, it's this... Yeah, 2 hours and 22 minutes. It really felt like they were just trying to cram as much into this runtime. And yeah, you can definitely feel it, because this is, like I said, it's a very disjointed, the characters are always moving around, and you can feel some scenes are shorter than others. At least that's what I realized from my personal viewing last night. Because yeah, some scenes are longer than others, and it's just, when you can just feel like when they cut a scene, it just feels like there was like another minute or two added onto that scene. And it's just like, there's a lot of scenes where like characters are in one location, and then in the next scene they're in another. without no explaining to how they got there. And that's why I say that this script is messy. It's I don't know how to explain it really any better than I already have. And as far as fan service goes, I'll talk quickly about that without getting into spoilers. All the reviews that I'm sure that you have seen and read have talked about the fan service. For me, and just this being the concluding chapter to the Skywalker saga, was I satisfied? I'll talk about that. No, I was not really satisfied with this ending. Did I have a good time with the movie? Yes. But was I satisfied with the way everything wrapped up? No. I was very unsatisfied with a lot of things in this movie because there's certain story elements in this movie I was just questioning. I was just like, wait, what? And it really doesn't make sense. There's a lot of like twists and turns that just make you go question and go, what? How does that make sense? Okay, so you're saying one thing here and then saying another thing. There's no explaining. I don't know. This movie just didn't. I didn't really. Like, so I went to this movie really wanting to like it. I had high expectations going into Rise of Skywalker. I wanted to see a great ending conclusion to the Skywalker saga. As a huge Star Wars fan, I really wanted a great conclusion. And you can, if J.J. Abrams directed all three of these movies, we may have had a more compelling and a more satisfying ninth movie. And like I said earlier in this review, to all the people that like it, I'm 100% glad you like it. That is good for you. More power to you. But yeah, I just felt like if J.J. Abrams directed all three movies in this new franchise, this ninth movie would have been more compelling and more satisfying. But because Rian Johnson came in and did his take and totally killed off Snoke in episode 8, there's very limited options that episode 9 was left with, and yeah, you can definitely feel that this is, I don't know, I wasn't, this movie was just disappointing. Maybe on second viewing, this movie might change, like, my perspective on how I view things in this movie and how I guess take these twists and turns and the mindset that I have. I might enjoy it more. We'll see. I'm probably going to see it a second time. So anyways, they are my thoughts on Star Wars Episode 9, Rise of Skywalker. Anyways, if you guys have seen Episode 9, pop down to the comments and let me know what you guys all thought on Episode 9. I'm curious to know what you guys think. Where do you lay on the fan base of this movie? Are you one of the fans that like this movie, or are you one of the fans that don't like this movie? Let me know all your thoughts and comments down in the comment section down below. So anyways, guys, I hope you have a good rest of your weekend, and I'll see you in the next movie review.